Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Normal America Show. I'm your host, Rob Knorr. I got a special show for you tonight. It'll be abbreviated. It's supposed to start at 9 p.m. I have a debate with someone who reached out to me. I screwed up the title of the debate. I thought it was climate change, but it's not. It's Trump and systemic racism. I don't know if it's in that order. So it's good to see you all. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. I did. I had a family reunion. I had a wedding. So I was very busy. Tried to do the live stream with Comfy and was unable to do that, unfortunately. I'll talk more about Comfy Wednesday when I get home. But as of right now, I'm trying to stream there, but I don't know that it's working. Let me check here. It does not look like I'm online there, so we'll get that worked out. But what's up, D Gulag? What's up, Mr. Wednesday? It's good to see you all. As you know, I do not like streaming while I'm at work. I'm off the clock, which is fine, but I don't like doing it for various reasons. But here I am. Because unfortunately this debate was scheduled last Thursday, and I had a rehearsal for the wedding that my son was the ring bearer for. So it did not work out, and I didn't want to cancel on this person twice. I believe this is a high school student that reached out to me. I believe they said they're 17 and that they were looking to have about an hour debate. So unfortunately, I won't be sticking around long when this is over because I do have a lot of paperwork and stuff like that to do. So it is what it is. But I'm always up to have a discussion or debate with people, even if it's people that have never done it before. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll be an enjoyable conversation for myself and for you all as well. But I do not know what to expect. My friend Aftershock reached out to me. Oh, yeah, Hank the ring bearer. Hank did not make it up the aisle as the ring bearer. There were 3 ring bearers. There was a bit of a blow up with some of the ring bearers. So one of them made it up. The other 2, including Hank, did not. But he was very good at the wedding. So it was really fun. It was a good wedding. Family reunion the next day. I mean, Hank just went and went and went and went and went. I mean, I followed around 3 hours at that wedding, just running around, playing with little kids, dancing on the dance floor. You know, he's a year and a half old, so it was really cool. I had a good time with him. It is the best time in my life, it just bar none. And I recognize, I don't know that it'll ever get better than it is right now. I'm just as happy as could be. And just following him around, watching him have fun for 3 hours, just, oh my goodness. It was just top. It was the tops. So, I had a great weekend. I tried to do the opening night of Comfy. There were tech problems. Part of that was I did a stream and I was waiting for them to solve the tech problems. So I was up until 3 a.m. and some shenanigans went on. My friend Aftershock, who other than my wife probably supported my channel more than anyone. Aftershock, great guy. Has meant a lot to this channel. He was in the chat on my stream and was chatting. And then Dylan Burns, who's a left-wing streamer, came on and said something. And Aftershock is harsher than me, and that Aftershock believes that I shouldn't even communicate with people like Dylan. That I should not talk to anyone on the left, that they're all 100% bad faith in everything they say. They want to take me down, and that I should not communicate with them in any way that's positive whatsoever. I'm not that harsh. I think that while it is true that many people on the left do want people like me removed, and Dylan may or may not be one of those people. I cannot go through life furious at everyone who might have any political beliefs that want my beliefs silenced. If that was the case, that pretty much limits 95% of your percent of your entertainment options. You wouldn't be able to buy about any product because almost every single product that is used is the corporations dislike us. You wouldn't be able to use Twitter. You wouldn't be able to use YouTube. You wouldn't be able to donate to me through PayPal. You wouldn't be able to donate to me through Patreon. I wouldn't be able to use those services. So I just separate that part of my life. I do what I can when I can. But I'm not the type of person that sits there like gritting my teeth like, God damn, Pisco, Dylan Burns, Sonsel, Destiny, Vosh, no! That's just not who I am. I don't give a shit. I think my channel is best when I'm debating people. I think that's when I'm having the most fun. If I just, every time someone comes on, I'm just like, F you, I hate you, then I probably will have 0 conversations that are available to me, which would be the most fun that I have in this channel removed. I also think that's usually what most of the people tune in to see me do, is to debate people. So I don't see the problem with saying, hey, I could be affable to you and say, I think your positions are shit, and even telling them that I think they're bad faith when they're being bad faith, but not yelling and screaming at them at the top of my lungs that I hate them. Aftershock disagrees with me. He's currently on Dylan's channel. I caught like 10 minutes of it. He's basically yelling and screaming at Dylan. That's fine. My advice to people is to be themselves first and foremost. That's all I'm good at, is being myself. I hear you, Zach. So I can't be phony. I can't go on here and be like, I hate Dylan Burns more than anything. I think he's a shit person, blah, blah, blah. I think Dylan's politics is terrible. I think he's young. I think at the end of the day, if I got canceled from my channels, he would probably be like, oh, that sucks. Whatever, moving on. I don't think he wishes me harm as a human being. I think that he's willing to forgive people like Joe Biden that probably would wish me harm as a human being. I think that is right in line with a bunch of friends that I have in real life that are also left-wing. I separate those things. I don't think that when I talk to Dylan that I have to just be contentious and yelling at him the whole time. I think that if we talk about a movie or wrestling or something like that, I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to be his buddy in real life. It doesn't mean that there's a problem if I was trying to be his buddy in real life. There is probably a streamer out there more geared towards that. That's just going to be like, I fucking hate everyone that's remotely on the left. May they all lose their channel. May they all suffer horrible consequences. That person probably exists. And I have no problem if people in my audience are like, that's who I would rather listen to. I would rather go in that direction. It's just not who I am. So I think I'm as good as anyone at calling out when I think people are being bad faith on the left. And the reasons that we need to go on the offense, I think I do a damn good job with that. But I could do so while being affable. And I think that I raise the tension when I should. If someone comes at me being a dick, I think I reciprocate. But very rarely do I start off on that track. And Aftershock is convinced that my channel would be much bigger if I didn't do that. If I didn't talk to Dylan Burns. If I didn't talk to Destiny. If I didn't talk to Sonzo. I disagree. But that's what's up. So, but I still love Aftershock. Like I said, I think he's done more to help my channel than anyone else. It's just a disagreement that we have. And I also think more than ever, you're seeing independents wake up to just how extreme like the current administration and left-wing politics are. And I think that if we show, I mean, it's a case I've been making to Republicans since at least 2018. We're the party of fun. We're the party that you could tell a joke in high school in your yearbook, and we're not going to try to ruin your life 30 years later. You don't have to police your words to the point where you're walking on eggshells when you're talking to conservatives. At least not when you're talking to me. I'm not going to try to ruin your life over something like that. That's the left. That's their policies. That's their ideology. That's not mine. And I think that if you come off as too unhinged, like I'm loud, I talk loud, and I guess you could say I yell sometimes, but if I just come in even hotter than that, just, well, fuck you, you piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. I think anyone that might hear my message, which I think my message is fantastic, I think I'm almost always out debating these lefties, and I think you lose anyone that might be remotely independent. They're like, oh, you're as crazy as they are, so we're just going to tune out. So I don't know. That's my personal belief on it, but when I feel like it, I'll be a jerk to someone. When I don't, then I won't, By the way, there is a solid chance that this is a troll tonight. If so, we'll promptly cut them off. And I'll probably end this stream. I'll say a couple words. No, I would say I go into a debate with Pisco more hot than someone like Dylan, but there's a reason for that, because Pisco knows better as a lawyer, right? And it's not just, like, for example, if you look at the debate I had with Destiny moderating with Pisco, I didn't come into that very hot, right? Alerts are turned on, Sparky. At least they should be. Yeah, I think this kid's young. I don't know. Nonetheless, I really don't like doing these streams while I'm at work, even though I am off the clock, because anything could happen. So, but yeah, Pisco, it's because the area that he's talking about, he claims to be his expertise, the law. And so when he makes excuse after excuse for the double standard, that's why. Trying to hype the peeps. Didn't announce the gifted son. Oh, my mistake. This. I'm sorry. Yeah, that overlay was off. I don't know why. Thank you, Sparky. I'm so sorry. I can't even... My setup here at my work computer is a disaster. This computer overheats constantly. The internet here sucks. That's one of the reasons I don't stream here. But again, if you're just tuning in... Like, I can't even see how many people are watching right now. It's crazy. Like, there's so many problems here. It's ridiculous. But I did I don't want to say back out. I basically backed out of this debate last Thursday because I had a rehearsal dinner for this wedding. And so this was the next available day that the person I'm debating could do it. So I said, okay, let's do it. Thank you to anyone who followed or subbed. I'm sorry I wasn't able to see. So we're waiting for this guy. I just have a hunch that it's going to be a trolling thing. I hope I'm wrong. But that's my hunch. Anyways, we're waiting. Okay, I think we're good to go. We're just going to do voice. I'm not going to do video, so... let me make sure my Discord settings are good here. Check. All right, we're good. What's up, John? Can you hear me?
Hello. How you doing?
Is John good? Is John fine if I call you John?
That's fine. Totally.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for being on. Sorry, I had a wedding rehearsal last Thursday and had to cancel at the last minute. So,
oh, that's fine.
Do you have a channel or anything you want to shout out before we get going?
I'm not sure. My friends might be mad at me. I'm not gonna shout out. We do have a channel, but I'm not gonna shout it out.
Okay. All right.
So.
All right. So you reached out and you just said that you wanted to just have a discussion. Didn't really have a topic in mind, and then once you thought about it, you went with. I screwed up the title of this. I'm debating someone on climate change later in the week, but we're going to talk about systemic racism and then Trump for about an hour. Is that what you had in mind?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if we'll get to Trump. It's
Okay.
I have school and then I have to start the new job tomorrow. So.
Okay. Well, hey, congrats on the job.
Thank you.
Hopefully it's something you enjoy.
I hope so too.
Good deal. So, all right. Systemic racism. Let's just jump in then.
Okay.
What about systemic racism did you want to talk about? Did you want me to give an overview on what I think of it, or did you want to give one?
Sure. Yeah, like if you could just like give like what you think, if you think it's real or not, if you think like it's culture or whatever, just
Sure. Okay. So I think systemic racism has certainly existed in this country. We had slavery, we had Jim Crow, and other things. However, it is massively overblown as an excuse today, and it is used as part of sort of a cultural Marxist power game where they seek to divide people in oppressor versus oppressed status. And so they use systemic racism, tearing at a wound that make it sound way worse than it actually is in order for them to achieve power, which causes more separations and actually exacerbates the very problems that those talking about systemic racism seeks to want to solve. The reality is systemic racism does exist. There is systemic racism against black people. There's also systemic racism against white people, against Asian people. There's white privilege, there's black privilege, there's Asian privilege, there's Hispanic privilege, there's straight privilege, there's gay privilege, there's Muslim privilege, there's Christian privilege. The reality is that life is complicated depending on where you're at, when you're at, and what situation you're at. Sometimes it's beneficial to be in one of these groups, other times it's detrimental to be in those groups. The reality is that we have one of the best societies that has ever existed. Things like prejudice versus people for things such as race, for things such as gender, for things such as sexual orientation has been much, much worse in the past, and we're getting better slowly but surely, and it's only been getting worse in the past decade or so as we've picked at that wound more and more. So in the efforts to fight systemic racism, what it's led to is more racism, which is detrimental to both black people, white people, and people of all other colors.
okay. I'm not gonna argue for. I'm not sure how much like this will be similar to any other debate you have. I'm not gonna argue for even like affirmative action. I think that's probably first of all, I don't think that's like helping like actual people who need to be like helped. If you're already at the point where you can get a job or get into college, you've done pretty well for yourself. The real struggle. So actually, let me start over and just give my opening statement.
Sure.
So I think that if you look at the stats in the U.S. for, I guess just like between white people and black people, you can see that, and even other races too. Black people are very disproportionately poor, and you would have to make some, I guess, like reason why that would be. A lot of people say like mental differences. I believe that it's probably due to past racist laws like Jim Crow or segregation, or even all the way back to slavery or the failed Reconstruction, and I think those things still have an effect on today. Those racist laws still have an effect of today, because right out of the civil rights movement, you have things like the war on drugs and redlining, which I wouldn't really make the claim that they're like directly racist and that they were meant to like specifically hurt black people, but they definitely did not help because they come out of segregation real dirt poor because they're segregated into these terrible communities, and they can't really get out of them because of like redlining or war on drugs, which keep them very poor. And so you see racist outcomes that you would see back during Jim Crow still today. And that's why I think the majority of, or not the majority, but a disproportionate amount of black people are really poor and commit violent crime and do all that. And that's my gist.
Okay, so first, let's just talk. So there's a lot of buzzwords that I hear you say. Can you explain to me how redlining kept black people poor today?
So, right out of segregation, I think redlining, you could make the case, started like less than 10 years after. You could even make I've saw people make the case that it started before. And so this prevented mainly just poor people from, getting loans, getting out of the poor communities, especially during kind of the collapse of jobs in like what is now the Rust Belt. And so these, disproportionately black people were stuck in these poor communities where there isn't a lot of opportunity.
So a lot of people, like you said, it wasn't just black people. This was also poor white people as well. These policies were made illegal decades ago, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea that somehow we have to look today to see that people that are impoverished today, it's because of policies of the past. I don't know that we say that today is because of systemic racism. If those policies weren't specifically targeting black people, if they were targeting poor people, then we could say that there's a problem with systemic poverty. and that there happens to be more black people that are poor. But the reality is the story of redlining isn't as it seems. This is just a buzzword that people on the left use all the time. We're supposed to believe that the situation in black communities, such as things like violent crime, fatherlessness, amount of time spent in prison, education achievement and things like that have all declined since the removal of redlining. And that seems to be counterintuitive. It seems to be that let me approach it differently. Let's say that redlining did everything that you think it does. Now what's the solution?
Well, everything that I think it does, the solution would probably be to institute some like more Social Security, things like healthcare, things that generally just help poor people. I don't think that like black people today are like I don't think there's like even close to like Jim Crow laws happening today. I don't even you couldn't make that case to me. But you see these racist outcomes that you would see back during when there were actual racist laws, and they have an effect on today. My solutions wouldn't necessarily reflect the fact that black people are disproportionately poor. I'm just saying that if you're looking for an answer, okay, why are black people disproportionately poor in America? Then that would be my answer.
So I could make the opposite. I could make the opposite case. I could say that a lot of poor people were given loans to purchase homes that they then defaulted on, which made them even poorer. And that actually the thing that is more responsible for inner city black people continuing to remain in poverty is the war on poverty policies, where we incentivized people not working and not bettering themselves by creating programs that incentivize things like single motherhood. So the problem wasn't denying loans to poor people. The problem was giving free money to people that were in single parent homes.
So what I saw for things like the war on poverty is actually that it dropped across the board. Poverty, I think it was when it started, when records started in 1958, it was like at 17%, somewhere around there. And then I think by the time around like 1970, the beginning of 1970, it was around was it 11%, I think? But yeah, so it seems to across the board drop poverty. Now the percentage of like the average gap between black wealth and white wealth seems to be generally the same. That hovers around like 65%, I believe.
Right. But the war on poverty policies, even if it did technically leap, I'd have to look at the exact numbers, because the problem with how we measure poverty is that they constantly change the numbers. You can see this with like inflation. So I remember during the Bush years, Bush celebrated lifting a bunch of people out of poverty. In reality, what had happened was they changed the definition of poverty. And we would also expect a natural curve without the war on poverty for less and less people every year to be in poverty, just because the mass amounts of gain in wealth that we had, largely due to free markets and capitalism, that we saw occurring throughout the country and actually throughout the world. So if you look since, for example, the 1960s, the amount of people that have been alleviating from crippled poverty around the world, that number is also massively improved. But the war on poverty specifically, you can see a direct line to policies that incentivize single parenthood versus the decline of children born out of wedlock, or the increase in the children born out of wedlock in all communities, but in particularly the black community. So it's been a while since I looked at this, but there was a Democrat named Moynihan in the 60s that commissioned something called the Moynihan Report, and he said that it was a national crisis that 1/3 of black children were born out of wedlock. That number is over 75% now. So I don't think it's an accident as the federal government went into these inner cities and knocked on doors and said, hey, we could give you a bunch of money if the father didn't live in this home, that's exactly what we've seen. And I would argue that single parent, when you look at the, sort of the data that you were outlining, black people that tend to be poor disproportionately or tend to face more consequences in things like our criminal justice system. I think that the easiest metric that we could look at, the two metrics, would be the education system and single parenthood. I think those two things are the best indicators of whether or not someone will end up in trouble with the law, someone will end up in crippling poverty, etc., at least in the United States. So I think sort of the policies that you're talking about have been counterintuitive. I wouldn't disagree that we should have policies to keep people from starving. But we have to understand that the best way to transform a community, particularly one that I'm not going to argue, if you go as far back as slavery, started off at a huge detriment in this country. But the best way to better them is through hard work, learning skills, and things like that, having those sorts of opportunities. And instead, it seems that the opposite's occurred. That there's been a bunch of focus on race, benefiting people financially based on single parenthood and race. And that has made large communities dependent on the government, which means that they never developed the skills independently to better themselves because they were reliant on the government.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about like you need to learn skills. You need to you have to learn skills. You have to get jobs. I agree totally. I think that like individuals should strive to do that, but it's much easier to do that if your community isn't like kind of gone to hell. Should I swear on here? Is that allowed?
Oh, I don't care. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It has gone to hell. So we can I think the Democrats are really bad. They've poured a lot of money into these communities, and it hasn't really worked because they're not targeting the right things. For example, I think schools, for example, I had a debate with someone over like private schools versus public schools, and you see that private schools generally have better outcomes than public schools. I think that's probably more due to the community around that private school. If you're going to a private school, chances are you're probably a bit on the wealthier side. Your parents probably support you and maybe pressure you to do good in school. And if you need a tutor, they can buy it, okay? So having these opportunities have to be built into the community, and we have to supply that to the community. For example, I have a learning disability, and I got the tutoring I needed, but without that, I couldn't read jack shit. So we need to fund opportunities like tutors and after school programs, and just like coding classes into these schools so that we can keep kids from joining gangs and doing all and being desperate and so much that they join gangs or whatever.
Well, it seems that we have a proven method to be. So one, there's what you're saying, sort of what we call in the debate community non-unique. If you look at this numbers, we actually put huge amounts of money into these public schools in the inner city. In fact, someone who's attending a public school in the inner city per student is getting more money from the government than someone who's attending a public school in rural America. And so we actually per student spend more money. This is just public schools, not private schools, in the inner city. The problem is the teachers' unions. That's the big problem. It has nothing to do. You could keep throwing money. We could triple the amount of money we throw to urban schools, and they're not going to get better for a litany of reasons. The first is the teachers' unions. They don't care about educating the children. They care about sort of initiating their agenda. We saw this under COVID. They were more than happy to lock down schools, force them to wear masks, etc., even though every other developed country realized that was a horrible mistake because they saw this as initiating some of their ideology. We see that the curriculum is one that's not geared towards math, English, reading, things like that. It's geared more towards sort of an political ideology and creating activists through things like social emotional learning. But there's other problems as well, the culture surrounding these schools makes it difficult even for a teacher that wanted to be good to be able to do so because there's so much violence and things like that that occurs in the communities. The best example we have right now to be able to solve this is school choice. Now, school choice isn't perfect, and without sort of reining in what the government regulates at these schools, it's only going to be a Band-Aid, but it's a Band-Aid that it's least workable right now. But for some reason, the Democrats are vehemently against school choice. They say, no, we shouldn't do that. We should trust white parents to be able to decide where to send their children, but not inner city black parents. I think that's a huge mistake. And I think that the private schools that you're talking about are better, not just because the culture is better around there, but also because you sort of are paying for that service. And as such, when you pay for something, you're making sure that it's operating better. And so these private schools have to compete for your business, and as such, the money's being sent from private people that are expecting to get something for their buck, and if they don't get that from their buck, then they leave. So that's a large reason why private schools are doing better, and these private schools succeed and thrive in inner cities such as Harlem when the option is there for black students to go. So I think that there is a huge problem with education, but the problem that everyone wants to say is, well, let's just throw more money. Throwing more money won't solve the problem. It's not as if we don't put billions upon billions of dollars in this, and it's like, oh, you know what? We never thought with that $1 billion to create a tutoring program. Like, they do these things, and it still doesn't work.
So, I mean, school choice is kind of a hard thing for people who are in these communities because, like, if you are poor, if your parents are poor, even if you have, like you said, like, even their father might be gone. So, if you're like a single mother, first of all, you're not gonna be able to afford a private school, even if it's like the cheapest private school there is. And you can't homeschool your kids because you don't have the time. You're working like 3 jobs, minimum wage. There's no chance you can even begin to give them a good education. So they have to go to public schools because, you know, and for some of it's kind of daycare because like they have to go to work.
Well,
so they gotta put their kids.
Real quick, just to cut you. You are aware that the school choice, the idea of it would be instead of sending like $13,000 to the school that your kid is forced to go to, that $13,000 comes to you as the parent, and then you choose where to spend that $13,000. So the idea, well, they can't afford it. Well, the money that they're given right now, except they don't get the money, it just goes straight to their school district. That money would come to their hands, and then they'd be able to choose the school that their kid went to.
They're not. I mean, people in like Detroit aren't paying $13,000 for like their schools. Their taxes are very low. The average, like I think the average black family has like a net worth of like below 30,000. But that's barely.
But no. The majority of money for those inner city schools doesn't come from local property tax. It comes from the federal government. Right? So it doesn't matter. They could pay zero in taxes and they're still how do you think who's paying for their kid to go to school?
Well, I think sure, but again, I would rather just like try to improve the communities around them than these like private schools where, I mean, again, and you talked about the influence they would have that they could just take their money somewhere else. I mean, unless there were like 5 public schools per district and they each had like, 200 kids, you can't really move private schools because, you're stuck there because you don't have the money to move and there's one private school.
But again, if the policy changed, then it would open up a market for more private schools to be created, right? And there are private schools in these communities. It's just difficult at this time for people that are poor to be able to afford them. But to me, the best solution would be to give these people the same option you would give anyone else. Like, we have no problem looking at suburban white communities and saying, sure, you should be allowed to choose where you send your school. This is just a way, right now, if there's a monopoly, if you have no choice but to use a certain product, then that product has little incentive to be a good product, right? For example, if you could only get one insurance company for your car, they'd probably pay out like shit and charge you huge premiums because you have no other game to go to. That's the way these public schools are. They don't have to worry about competing. It's built in. The government gives them money per student. It doesn't matter within very few criteria how well they perform. So if you're a parent and you live in these districts right now and you don't have money to choose a private school, then you're stuck sending your kid to whatever district you live in. And if that school sucks, well, then tough luck. But if we'd send them the money, it would change the culture where then they would be able to say, okay, now all I have to do is send my kid 25 minutes away, which some form of transportation from the school will come pick them up. And this school's way more effective. Now, it is true that there would be parents that don't care, right? And that's sort of another, I would like to see the numbers, but I don't think that it's as you say for probably over 50% that you see these households where mom and dad or just mom or just dad are working their ass off. I think a lot of people are subsisting off of government monies, child support, welfare programs, and things like that. So I kind of reject the idea that a huge problem is that all these parents in the inner city are working 3 or 4 jobs, and so therefore they wouldn't have time for homeschooling. Sort of neither here nor there for this argument, but I would like to see what those numbers are. Because I think that one of the big problems in these communities is that we've subsidized things, and you can't blame people. I would have done the same. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm at heart a lazy person. If someone told me, Rob, don't go to work and we'll send you money to stay at home, I'd probably stay at home, right? I think that that's horrible that we've done this to these communities through all sorts of policies that have been detrimental. I just think that the policies of the left in almost every single facet make things worse.
Well, I mean, I could show you like a study about like how. Sorry,
It's all right. Don't worry about it.
sorry about that.
If you need to take it, go for it.
Um,
No big deal.
no, it's okay. I'll call them back. But if you I could show you a study about like how like healthcare systems or social security doesn't make people lazy. But I kind of just want to like say if you're like stuck in these communities where it's very poor, there's very little opportunity, you're probably going to end up being more lazy than if Social Security gave you some opportunity where you weren't weighed down by like everyday costs and maybe could afford, a better school or could afford to maybe send your kid to like a community college where they could like build up credits and all that. So these programs, if done correctly, can be really good for poor people. And if you look at even like we're not talking like Sweden level like public healthcare, but the ACA took like I think 8 million people out of poverty.
Okay, if
And of
that's
course you could
true,
say like
okay, but if that's true, and we're just talking specifically about education here, then we would expect to see, as we've increased the amount of sort of medical spending that we've had, government medical spending, other forms of welfare, then we would expect that in the communities that are receiving that their education levels would have risen. Correct?
sure, but then again, like you can't just like expect one thing, like one weight of like healthcare costs to be like maybe taken down a little, and then for them to just suddenly have a good commute. First of all, that would take time, and then you know, second of all, they really do need more help, and I think I criticize the way the Democrats put money in, just kind of threw money at these communities. They don't like many of these people like aren't very involved in their local government because again they're very busy. So like we would probably have to do a more systematic approach to how these schools should use the money, how they should like I saw a thing that it was some suburb of Detroit, and they got like all this money, and nothing increased. Like all that money went from like went just I forget where they said, but it didn't increase like after school programs, tutoring. I think the teachers still reportedly had like supply issues. They couldn't afford paper or pencils or like anything. So and in this community there were like AC was broken, and like the school would get really hot during the summer, and they didn't have heating, so it would get really cold. And so if we could improve those things, like for example pay for school lunches and just increase the overall comfortability of schools, I'm not sure if that's a word, then that like
Sounds good to me.
studies show overwhelmingly that just massively
that's-
increases
But that's the
kids
point.
coming to school.
That's the point I'm making to you. The point I'm making to you is what everyone says is, well, if we just send more money. But you're making my point for me. Right. So we send more and more money, and then the very basics, like kids don't have books, they don't have computers, the air conditioning's not running, there's gang problems in this school, there's massive amounts of violence. And yet the schools, the administrators get more and more money and end up hiring more and more administrators, and the quality of the education declines, right? It's a massive problem. Like, the more the government gets involved in trying to fix this problem, the more the problem's exacerbated, which is why getting the government out of this, like right down to sort of the regulations on what they allow to teach or what they recommended to be teach, like we could see when we look at our public schooling versus the rest of the world, we're declining every year despite throwing more and more money as one of the wealthiest countries in the world at the problem. Why? Well, because throwing money is not the answer. Until you change the people running these schools, both at the teachers union level, the administrator level, and the government level, then you're just going to throw money that lines people's pockets. The best way we have in the interim to solve this is to allow parents to make the decisions for their own child more than the government. And the best way to do that is to allow the spending to be per student for the parents to get those students, to fund students as opposed to funding school systems. But I don't think this is a problem that I would call systemic racism. I think there are unique problems in the inner city, but the problems that we're talking about here affect poor Appalachian schools
sure.
as well. So, to the idea, I will say this. I think it gets you out of the worst parts of the debate to say that you're not going to debate affirmative action and things like that. But I actually find your position to be far more reasonable. Because if we're going to give people help as a government, it should be based on need, not based on skin color. And so if there is a white person that's born to a single mother who makes $20,000 a year, why shouldn't they be entitled the same help that a black person who's born to a single mother making $20,000 a year gets? And I think what you see is the opposite occurring. I think that you even see just this past month, we've seen policies, bank loans being given to first-time homeowners that are black. We saw the vaccine being recommended to give out to people based on skin color. We've seen farmers that were impoverished that were going to be able to get loans that they didn't have to pay back based on skin color. These things not only don't solve the problem, they exacerbate the problem. It's worse for black Americans and it's worse for white Americans, because what it does is it creates a two-tiered system and animosity, and that's why we see for years race relations were getting better and better and better, and now they're getting worse. And that's because we've created this, situation where we say this is a black problem, this is a white problem, and the government, is almost always at this point, almost all of our culture is on the side of saying, well, we'll say every black problem is the worst thing in the world, we need to do everything to solve it, and, whites don't have problems. And then the reality is the people that craft that message, they don't give a shit about white or black people. That's how you see Black Lives Matter, billions of dollars raised, not much done in the inner city, though, because it's a grift.
I agree that I think that if I were to do I don't believe in reparations or anything, but if I were to do that, I would just give it to poor people in general, because I think systemic racism doesn't affect the way I would make policies. It answers a question. Why are black people so poor? Okay, because of systems in the past affecting today. Okay, that makes sense. It's not going to affect my policy. I think that generally, I think the messaging around systemic racism has been so bad. Before this talk, I went downstairs to I don't know, talk to my mother and my sister who were watching The Bachelor, and I asked them if they because I've been watching a few of your debates, if they defended the riots, and they said, oh yeah, they were justifiable. And I used one of your arguments to police are killed by black people, would that make it justifiable and all that. So I think the majority of Democrats who went to BLM protests have no idea the reality. And the messaging on this has been so bad, and I totally understand why poor white people would be totally pushed away from the Democratic Party, because if you're poor living in Appalachia and you can barely afford gas to put in your car to go to work, and someone tells you, oh, you have white privilege, that I would blow up just from anger.
Well, yeah, so, but it works the other way as well, right? I think this is what I think that if a lot of people on the Democratic Party or on the left treat black people like they're monolithic and like they're children, right? And I think that a lot of that has to do with sort of a self-fear that if they don't treat people like children, that those people will inevitably be as good as they are. In fact, they might be better. They might outcompete them for the very types of things that they like, right? So one of the ways to keep someone beneath you is to say, oh, the whole world's unfair to you. You poor you. We're here to help. We can help you. We understand how unfair things are. Life hasn't given you a fair shake, so you're not responsible for your actions. And we see this all the time. Even in education, we see this. There are regulations and rules proposed to have different consequences for students based on skin color. This is absurd, right? You can see this all through sort of your, Ibram Kendi and, people like that, that talk about, systemic racism means that we can't view math scores the same with black people as white people. This is nonsense. It's nonsense. And if you constantly tell a community that the entire world's out to get them, but that's okay, just to relax, you'll take care of them, then what happens is generationally, those communities learn to rely on the government. And to me, that's one of the great fears I have for all people. That if people, I see in my community in rural Pennsylvania, I see it. More and more people are like, why should I bust my ass? Now I have to work 60 hours a week to pay my mortgage. Or I could just get disability. Or I could just, get unemployment insurance and do this, and this, and it seems that more and more in my community, I see people saying, you know what, I'll just rely on the government to take care of me. I haven't been inundated in my community like maybe inner city Detroit has, that's been inundated for generations. So I think that that is to me a form of systemic racism that our institutions have told people in these communities for generations, that the world's out to get them and nothing's their fault, when instead we should say bad shit happened in the past, all we could do is move forward. You should have that much more of a chip on your shoulder to say, to hell with this, I'm going to achieve despite this, and we should have gave them all the tools to be able to achieve. But I see it the opposite. Instead of encouraging that and individuality and sort of self-betterment in communities, we've made communities reliant on the government with predictable results.
So I think that, like, I don't think in black communities people are like rely. I don't think they're like giving up their jobs to like rely on the government. I'm not. Maybe that's not. Maybe I just misunderstood. But these people are working their asses off, and they still just can't get anywhere because in America it's very hard to be poor. Very few people can make it out of poverty. Now some people can. I think this. I agreed. With one of your first statements. This is, I would say, probably one of the best countries in the world, where my mother grew up very poor, and now we're middle class, 3 cars, are doing really good. You can make it, but for these communities, it's so hard because they are stuck with all these, poor schools, and I don't want to come back on this school thing, but and they can't move, and it's just generally really hard. I think that with like actual good, like even the limited like Social Security that we have can take some weight off of like food stamps, can take the weight off of like just the cost of food, which can help save up for other things and like a rainy day, because a lot of Americans can't even afford a rainy day. I'm sure you've heard the study that like most or not most, but like a very large percentage of Americans couldn't afford like a $400 expense without going into debt and like basically taking out what could have been like rent. So I think that good Social Security, some parts that we have can bring a lot of people out of poverty and can help them get the opportunity where they can go and make and progress up the economic ladder and join the middle class and go to good towns with good schools and maybe public choice or whatever, or school choice or whatever. But the government does, I think, fundamentally need to boost these communities in some way, because private companies aren't going to do that. In the free market.
I think you see the exact opposite. For example, one of the biggest socialist policies we've had in decades was the policies we had in 2020 under COVID, where we, instead of allowing private decisions involving our economy, we had the government massively shut down large portions of the economy, then increase the money supply by 50% and spend trillions of dollars. And the net result of that, which is a socialist dream, ended up being one of the largest transfers of wealth from the poor and working class to the upper class. Now, I don't disagree that if you can't eat, it's hard to get educated and hard to get a job. But the problem is that as we create these programs that, we say should be limited to help people on a temporary basis until they can better themselves, we see over and over again that this actually makes people reliant on these programs. I'm not saying that there's not a place for a limited welfare system, but again, how long do we need to rely on these systems? You just tell me, if you believe that these systems are necessary to better people, do you think that inner city black America, when it comes to education, when it comes to jobs, is doing better now than it was 30 years ago?
I think in some areas, like for example, you have some of them, I think the rate of graduating high school had gone up, and I think getting into college had gone up. I might be wrong about that. Some things were better, but generally I think I mentioned this before, the percentage of like wealth gap between black people and white people had generally stayed the same. I think it's probably better, but then again, I still think they need a lot of help.
Right, but the problem is like the problem with your mentality is this. No matter what data we see going forward, say for the next 10 years, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. Your solution's always going to be the same. Well, more money. That'll be it. So, for example, if we toss twice as much money in the next 10 years than we did in the previous 10 years, and the problem stays about the same, you'll say, well, now we need even more than that. But if we toss twice as much money and the problem starts to get better, you're not going to say, okay, pull back now. You'll say, see, now we need to throw more money at the problem. So it doesn't matter. And I'll just say this real quick, right? You don't even really know, right? I'm assuming you don't know. I don't know how much better and based on what metrics we're using to say if there's been an improvement or how much more money's been spent on these specific programs. What you already did admit was that despite an increase in money in the one issue that we were talking with education, simple things like books and air conditioning still is not being achieved. We have trillions of dollars that are spent in this country every year. They don't even have drinking water in Jackson, Mississippi. So the problem isn't as simple as just throw money at the problem.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that, like, I criticize the Democrats just throwing money at these cities and not actually, like, pre-planning what it would be used for. I think running out of, like, just giving people money is terrible idea. You have to, like, plan what this is, like, where this is going to go. Oh, this is going to go to fixing the AC. This is going to go to paying for food. This is going to go for pencils or whatever. You need to, like, pre-plan because these smaller communities, their local government, people aren't really involved because they're busy. The other thing I want to address is I want a system in America where I think that in this kind of system, which I believe, I would say I'm pretty free market. I'm a pretty free market guy. I think that we need a system where the government, if you're doing really poorly, the government kind of needs to catch you and then push you back out where they can just let you kind of back into the free market where you can achieve things on your own. But I don't think in a society that's so wealthy, we should allow people to reach the lows that people do. I mean, I went to like these really really rich towns, or not towns, like cities near me, and they're just homeless people on the sidewalks, and I can't. I know I'm kind of going on a tirade there, but I can't. Like, how did we get here? It's like this is literally the richest country on earth, and we have poor people who.
Well, it's because.
Don't have bootstraps to pull themselves up by.
Let me ask you this. Let's just take a state. What state do you think did the best at putting money into programs to helping homeless people?
To helping, I don't know. I would have
if you had to take a guess.
If I had to take a guess, I don't know, maybe like, I know you're gonna have some answer to this. New York or California, but that's probably not California. But
well, it is California. I don't know. California, right? So, for example, the people. Listen, you're young, right? And I'm not disagreeing with you that we should, as a society, we should be measured largely by how well we do for those that are the least lucky or the least capable. We should. That's something that we should take care of. The question is, should we be doing it through our own goodwill? Should we be doing it through force, through government taxation to force people to do these things? I think it's a mix. I think there is room for government programs and that there are certain things that we should try to do. The problem is, like, you're just thinking of this with a big heart, which is admirable, but we can see in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco, there's a guy named, I believe his name's, is it Michael Malice that ran for governor? I think. I could be wrong. There's another Michael. I get the two mixed up. But he's documented, for example, I believe in Los Angeles, they started to give basically really nice apartments to all the homeless people in, I believe, San Francisco or LA, one of the two, because they felt the same way as you did. They were like, wow, how can this be? In one of the richest areas in the world, we have homeless people. Let's give them homes, decent homes. Better homes than I have, right? A better home than I'm at. Let's give them these apartments. And you know what happened? Their death rate doubled. Want to know why? Because it wasn't just they were homeless because they didn't have the means to have a home. It was because there were significant problems with them. And when you take people, most of it's drug related. So when you take people with significant mental problems or with drug abuse problems and you give them big piles of money, you know what they did with that money? They went out and bought drugs and then they overdosed. And those that didn't overdose, most of their lives got way worse. So the idea that we just say, well, how can we be this society? I hate to break this to you, but we could get triple the wealth that we have. Let's say we find out that the United States has been sitting on some crazy new form of energy that's just so much better, so much more efficient than fossil fuels, right? Yeah, whatever, antimatter, right? Yeah. Whatever, and it triples the wealth of the United States in the next 5 years. You know what will happen? There'll still be poverty. There'll still be homeless people. There'll still be drug addicts. There'll still be crime. The best we could do is try to do our best to lower that, but it'll always exist. So this mentality that you have that's like, well, we're the richest country in the world, how could we have homeless people? Unfortunately, it's human nature. There will always be homeless people. That doesn't mean that we can't, as a government, try to do things to make it better or to alleviate it. But when you start with that fundamental ideology that there should be no homeless people, you end up with terrible policies that exacerbate the problem because you're striving for a utopia that will never exist. And so what we need to do is say, what's the root? Why are these people homeless? Before we just say, well, we need more programs. We have to figure out what programs would be necessary and how much we're willing to spend on those programs. Because I could say that one of the reasons that we see small businesses and working class people suffering more and more is because of things like inflation and because of things like a higher tax burden, because they're paying more and more into the government that spend more and more for these programs that don't really seem to help the problem with the poorest Americans, but it certainly lines the pockets of the richest Americans.
So, I mean, again, I'm going to go back to the homeless thing. Yeah, like I said, I think that just throwing money at things does not fix it. This is like, this is also like business 101. You have to pre-plan. I think a better solution would to take that money and maybe they're like, 10% of the homeless people just are like just grew up poor and stayed poor and had some bad luck and became homeless. Okay, give them some homes. Maybe give them some job opportunities and stuff. Maybe teach them a few things. Then 50% were like drug addicts or the rest of them were like drug addicts or had mental illnesses. You have to help them specifically. You have to put them did I say mental addicts? The mental
I know what you mean. Yeah, you're doing good.
The people who have mental diseases. You have to get them help in the proper places. You can't just throw them in the homes. And with a bunch of $100 bills, they're gonna go insane. You have to give them proper treatment. And then with drug programs, you have to put them in places where they can recover from drug use of heroin and stuff. Of course, if you just give a drug addict money, they will just go out and get more crack or something. You have to pre-plan. It's not like I don't think we should just be printing money and there's a line of homeless people and we just hand them $1,000 bills. I think we should probably spend that money for them to help them for things like drug programs that can help them off and then give them opportunities and do all these things. I of course that policy in California was stupid. Whoever made that up should not be in government.
So I just want to say that I'm just looking at this off the top of my head. As we're going real quick, this is from the Brookings Institute. So it shows that actually that there's been a steady decline, particularly of black men in the workforce. So, for example, in 2013 to 2014, blacks not working in the workforce were 35%. This is men. Whites were 17%. We could see that the numbers even show that there was an actual decline from January 2020 to 2021 as well. So, I mean, again, I think that my explanation bears out more just looking at the data. I'm admitting it's at a cursory glance, and maybe you or someone else will look at this data in more, with a more fine-tooth comb. But it seems as if that it is what I'm saying. And it's not, you have to understand too, we're just talking about, when we talk about, it's a weird conversation because you start with systemic racism, but then you're just kind of talking about poverty in general, which is fine.
Yeah, I mean.
But you have to understand, when we're looking at any of these numbers, they're not monolithic. For example, a black person that lives in my area in rural Pennsylvania, on average, has very different numbers than a black person living in the inner city. In fact, what you'll find is that black people living in my area have near identical numbers to white people living in my area. And so they're closer than when it comes to incarceration rates, average income, home ownership, etc. They're closer to me in that regard, even though I'm not black, than they would be to an inner city black person who's living in, say, Chicago. So I think that geography and sort of the culture in the cities has a lot to do with that change as well. So when we're looking at unemployment numbers, I could be wrong. Maybe you know different than me. I still believe that there is a huge percentage of black people that live outside of the inner city. I don't know what that percentage is.
Yeah.
Right. So now, granted, inner cities, many of these cities has a disproportionate population of people of color, particularly black people. But when you're looking at unemployment numbers, what I'm suggesting is in a lot of these cities, regardless of what you think the reason is, there's not good employment opportunities or there's not good employment numbers for a lot of sort of working age men in these communities. And that's why I think you see things like gang violence, because if you don't have a job, then you're probably likely to look for sources of income elsewhere. Plus you have more free time, which it's more time to get into trouble, So I do think that a lot of this has to do with sort of the start of making people reliant on government monies, right? And when you do that generationally, and not just that, but also incentivizing single parenthood, that takes away a lot of opportunities then for people to better themselves. Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman both talk about, minimum wage laws were a racist law against black people because coming out of sort of the Jim Crow and things like that, blacks could sell their labor cheaper than a white person and then prove they were good at that labor, which then led to advancement opportunities. When minimum wage came in, if you were a racist employer and you're like, well, I have to play this white guy or black guy the same, I'll just take the white guy. And so a lot of times these policies that are designed to help are counterintuitive. Now, I'm not saying that there's no room for social welfare programs. I think there is a role for limited social welfare programs. But we have to always implement them, understanding that we need to maximize an individual's potential and their opportunities to achieve for themselves. The goal should always be to give people the tools to make themselves better and not to give people things that make them reliant on you. And I unfortunately think that we've done things the exact opposite way in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to look at that study or look at those numbers more, and I'm sure that
I'll post a link. I'll post a link to what in our Discord chat. Again, I'm not saying this is the end all be all. Please understand me. You should not take my word. But it's just I was interested in that question, was like, because I'd never thought of it, and so I was like, I'll just see what the first thing that comes up when I look. So I sent that to you in Discord.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're not saying that's like the end all be all.
Right.
And I think that like there are a lot of good criticisms of the welfare we've had now, as you demonstrated, and I think that you can certainly have problems, but I think that generally, if you look at, I think these can definitely help, and a lot of the limited, Social Security that we have does seem to help people. I mean, again, I would have to. I was kind of. Can I be honest? I kind of was preparing more for like a more so we kind of got on par for the and like social welfare. I was more ready for like kind of back and forth about systemic racism, whether it like had an effect on that. But I mean,
yeah, I mean, real quick, we could. The problem with systemic racism is that it's massively overblown. I don't disagree that it's happened in the past. Is there some residual effect from the past? Yeah, right. Like, but to me, the problem is there's basically nothing we could do about systemic racism of the past. I think that a government moving forward, all you could do is say, look, mistakes were made in the past. If you were directly affected by that mistake, for example, the Japanese Americans that were interned in the Korematsu decision in World War II, yeah, they were still alive when they were given reparations. But they were literally interred, so it made sense. They were the ones aggrieved. Just like today, if someone's falsely imprisoned, they get some form of compensation from the state if the state was at fault in that false imprisonment, which happens quite frequently. But the problem is, what do we do going forward? But all we do is we say, look, we don't focus on race. We try to make things as equal as possible for everyone. And if we do have to help out, we focus on need, not based on race. Because I don't see the difference, for example, for if you're black and I'm not, right, and the reason that you're poor is because of Jim Crow laws in the South or whatever, and so your family never had an opportunity to gain wealth, whereas maybe my family was from the Pittsburgh region, and my grandfather was an alcoholic and pissed all of his money away, and then the steel mill shut down for my father, and so we're as poor as you. What does it matter at that point? Like, why is the government, like, why is you as a great-grandchildren, and me as a great-grandchild, why is the government help one of us more than the other? It doesn't make sense. And for me, systemic racism is just this buzzword that's used, right, to claim that all differences, any difference in data, is purely explained because of sins of the past. And I think that's nonsense. I think it does an injustice to solving the problems that we're looking at. Like, for example, I've had these debates a million times, like this could happen. Someone say, well, cops are twice as likely to shoot an unarmed black man as an unarmed white man. It's about 3 times more, actually. And you're like, yeah, but when you look at it, it turns out that in these communities where black men tend to live, where these shootings tend to occur, the police are also 3 times more likely to run into violent perpetrators. So maybe it has nothing to do with race and more to do with police are going to be more on edge and have good or justified or unjustified shootings in communities where they're worried that there's going to be violence that they're dealing with. And people say, any disagree, like they'll look at the data and they'll say, when it comes to blacks being shot more, they'll say, see, the data proves systemic racism. And you're like, well, no, we have to ask, what are the possible explanations for why this data exists, right? And they'll always just say, well, the answer is systemic racism. Maybe that might have something to do with it, but I'm actually concerned with how do we get violent numbers down in the inner city? And if we just say, well, it's racism, I think that's an injustice to the people that are living through that violence, because we should be looking at it saying, what can we do? What could we do to solve the root of this? Maybe it is more policing. Maybe it's better policing. Maybe it's more money for policing. Maybe it's more community outreach. Maybe it's better education system. Maybe it's encouraging 2-parent households. It could be a litany of things, and all of them deserve to be talked about. But instead, what we get is, well, it's systemic racism. Defund the police. Well, that has the exact opposite result. Now we're seeing more violence.
Yeah, you're not going to, I'm not going to ever throw out those talking points about, those police shootings being specifically racist. I wouldn't even make the argument that the guy who, I haven't even done enough research on this, so maybe it's true or maybe it's not, the guy who killed George Floyd was racist. I don't know. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, maybe he did it at the wrong time, whatever. I'm not gonna make those arguments, but I want to.
Good.
I want to all the arguments I just want to make, and again, like I said, these aren't just having these aren't not going to have effects on policy. If I'm looking for an answer why black people are so disproportionately poor, it seems likely it's probably due to the clearly racist systems we've had in our past, and then systems that have disproportionately affected black people because they were poor because of those previous racist systems. That's the argument I'm going to make.
I don't know, because I think that's there's no doubt that there's some effect. That's undeniable, right? But the question becomes, how much is that effect, and is it even worth really looking at if there's nothing we could do about it? I would say that you have a better case to make that incarceration levels due to nonviolent crimes like marijuana probably have more to do with it than Jim Crow laws of the 50s. I would say that that's probably somewhere that we could agree on more, that we should. I think we have an over-incarceration problem and an under-incarceration problem in this country, and specifically in the inner city, where we criminalize things that maybe we shouldn't criminalize as harshly, such as nonviolent drug crimes, for particularly marijuana, where at the same time, violent criminals that are committing gun offenses and things like that, we see in cities all across this country, such as New York, California, etc., where we're letting these violent criminals back on the streets. And they're not going onto the streets in Martha's Vineyard. They're not going onto the streets in my community in rural America. They're going onto these inner city streets. And it's the mothers there that are doing the right thing, that are working the jobs, like you're saying, that are trying to raise their kids by themselves, that now have to send their kids out to the street where these violent gangbangers are. But no one seems to give a shit about that. They just say, oh, well, we got to be, we have to look at black perpetrators. Well, what about black victims? And one of the things I think people lose sight of is that many of these harsh drug laws, for example, crack laws, these laws were made harsh because many people in the inner city black community wanted them to be harsh, because law-abiding black people were tired of seeing these people run free on their streets, terrorizing their families and their children. And so it's a complicated situation. That doesn't mean that there weren't racist police. That doesn't mean that some of these laws don't disproportionately affect. But the truth is that I think that the problem is bigger than that we need to stop treating black people as monolithic. They are all unique individuals. There are unique problems in a lot of these inner city black communities, and the answers to those problems are above my pay grade, right? But I think that what we need to do, the way to approach those problems, is to approach them to maximize individuality as opposed to maximizing sort of reliance on government. Because I think the government will fail them again and again, and that's what we've seen for 50 years.
Yeah, I think we could probably have like a entirely separate debate on like whether free market solutions are better or whether like government solutions are better. And I think for example, for something we might also agree on is that I used to be all on the defund the police thing. I have radically changed my position. I think I looked into a lot of like how police are trained, how long are police trained, and they're given a lot of jobs to balance a lot of things. If anything, they should probably be given more money so they can have.
That's absolutely correct. Yep.
Have better training, have longer training. Like if you look in like the Netherlands, I think they train for like a year, and I think what is it? I think it's only. I might be wrong on this. I don't know. It's only a small number of like weeks, I think, that police are trained in America, and
it's
has to handle so many jobs.
If you're like something that I can speak to, just because I have a little bit of expertise in my job that I do, is I take care of I work home healthcare with people with developmental disabilities, and so it might be autism or other disabilities that people have. I try to make it my goal to reach out to our local police force to introduce them to as many of the clients as possible, because they get zero training, none, on how to deal. Like if I engaged in a certain behavior, certain behaviors that seemed aggressive, the police would rightfully think that I'm being aggressive towards people and would want to intervene to stop that. But maybe someone with autism, they're operating differently, right? They might just be having a sensory issue, right? Like maybe bright lights or a car horn, or maybe an alarm's going off that's triggering what seems to be outwardly aggressive behavior, but maybe it's not, or self-injurious behavior and things like that. And the police just aren't trained to deal with it. They're dealing with that like they would anyone else. And that'll always be a problem, because even if you're trained in that moment, it's hard to say, oh, wait a minute, maybe this person has a sensory issue.
Yeah.
Right? If you're worried about protecting people, you might not be thinking that way. But still, that in just that little area, I could see the gross undertraining that even my local police have. And that's here. What do you do in an inner city, where you're dealing with violent criminals all the time, and then you come across someone who's not a violent criminal, it's just someone with an illness, but you don't know how to deal with them. But the defund the police movement, what made no sense to me, they're like, well, we'll hire people that are like me, someone who's trained more to deal with the people, and they'll go out on these calls. But then what happens when I run into the violent person? Well, then we'll train you to deal with violence.
Yeah.
Okay, so then basically I'm another cop. Instead of training a brand new person, why not just train the people that are there? Give them more training. Because the truth is, I think you're absolutely right. They don't get the training they need, and they're burned out. To be a cop in my little area of the world, it's probably not. Even some of them I know, they're working ridiculous hours, but they're not getting shot at. They're not in high-speed chases. That might happen once a year where I'm at. But if you're in inner city Chicago or Philly, how could you not go nuts as a police officer?
Yeah.
And, so, I mean, I'm with you there. I think I do, where I'll say our area of agreement is, I think there are real problems in inner city communities. I think there are. But I think that the more that we focus on sort of the language of systemic racism and focusing on things of the past, it makes things worse. And I think that also we should be maximizing. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any welfare programs. There shouldn't be any government, work in these areas. But I think that we need to focus on maximizing personal responsibility and helping people help themselves, as opposed on, making people dependent on the government.
Yeah, I think we agreed more a lot than I thought we would. I think that I would still stick by my beliefs that like I think that what was I gonna say? That like I would say this is a cause, but I don't want to like bring it up every 2 seconds. Like it happened. This is the reason. Let's see what we can do about it. I don't want to constantly bring this up. I don't want like there to be this massive talk about like systemic racism and stuff. I want solutions that will help all poor people, and I just want that. But
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that you approach this far more in line. Like, obviously, every two people are going to have disagreements. I don't think anything you've said's out of bounds as far as I'm concerned, or like moronic or anything like that. And yeah, I thought that it was a good conversation. If you ever want to call back in and talk about something else, I know you wanted to talk about Trump. We can do that at some point.
Hey, can I ask you? I'm sorry. Sure. I'm just really quick. Your opinion on climate change. I just wanted to know.
So this Friday, I'm going to be debating someone with a PhD in climate science. But I'll tell you my opinion. I think that there is a consensus. I think the consensus is that the climate's changing and humans have something to do with it. And that's the end of the consensus. I think that we've had models for decades that suggest that there's some catastrophe right around the corner. And I think that the government and people in positions of power use that fear to enrich themselves and to take wealth and power away from working class and poor people. And I think that this is no different. I think that we are in a far better position without massive government intervention today than we were 20 years ago, even by the models that we see, people want to tout. When I was young, when I was younger, in 2004, 2005, the debate topic one year was the Kyoto Protocol, which said that we needed to reduce our emissions from 2020 levels by 20% by the year 2020. So a bunch of 20s. We've done that. And none of those scientists came out and said, okay, we did it. They will always say we need to do more. The problem will never be solved. There will always be another catastrophe right around the corner. And I think that the people that spin this are doing it for personal wealth, and that they know it's bullshit because they're buying property, oceanfront property. They're flying private jets, just like they knew the COVID stuff was bullshit. They told us that we were all going to die from COVID if we didn't stay locked in our homes. Well, they went and ate at the French Laundry and got their hair done, etc., etc. So it is a scam largely to force people to give up property, to give up wealth, to restrict their rights so that the elites could have more wealth and more rights. And it's something that's done over and over again, and I wish people would wake up to it.
Yeah, I think that I disagree with you on a lot of that, but I do have to go. But
it's a long topic. We can talk. Yeah. Tune in Friday. I'll be talking to someone who this is their area of expertise.
I watch a lot of your debates. I see you talk to Destiny and Dylan Burns a lot. I think you're just when I was looking through people, because I've done debates. I did my college essay on me debating one of my teachers, and I mean I've done a lot of this. I just wanted to do it kind of online, and
let me ask you this: Are you going to college?
Yeah.
Have you considered doing debate in college?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you mind telling me what college you're going to?
I was thinking about the University of Maine. I know they have like a lot of. They have two Republican parties. One is more like Trumpy. One is a little bit more like moderate, and then they have like a Democrat party. And then
So the style debate I did was called policy debate. So it was like NDTC to debate. It's another word they use for it. And I don't know if you'd like it. You talk really fast like an auctioneer. But I did like it. I liked learning to argue two sides of an issue and things like that. But yeah, if it's something you're interested in, there's a lot of forms of debate that there's competitions with in college. There's the policy debate I did. There's a form called Lincoln Douglas debate. There's parliamentary debate that's modeled more after British Parliament. So there are options out there, and I would assume the University of Maine's a big enough university that they would have resources for that. So yeah, if it's something you like, I had zero experience in it until I went to college. I took a class. I went to a little state school called Clarion University here in Pennsylvania, and I fell in love with it. And I debated for 5 years, made it to the top levels of debate. Well, I can't say that. I made it to the national tournament, which only the top 72 teams go. Yeah, so it was cool, but I wasn't top tier. I was like mid tier when it came to the best teams. But Yeah, I mean, it's out. It might be something you'd be interested in, so check it out.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
message me. There are also summer debate camps you can go to if you ever want. If you decide to do debate and you're interested in that stuff, I still have a lot of connections in that world, so I might be able to get you in touch with someone that's running a debate camp or something. If that's something you'd be interested in.
Yeah, that's. Thank you so much. I mean, I couldn't. I mean, I really couldn't have asked for better. I mean, I think you're a pretty smart dude. I think that you're talking pretty. You talk in good faith and you answer questions, all that, and so that's why I chose you. So, I mean,
well, thanks. I appreciate it. Yep, and feel free to call back in if you ever like, and it just message me on Discord, even if you want to debate other people. The Crucible, I'm good friends with the guy Andrew that runs that. He could moderate. He's a great moderator, and you could debate any issue you want on there. I'm sure.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep. So reach out to me. Hey, thank you so much, and good luck to you at your job tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see.
Have a good day.
Bye. Well, that went way better than I thought. I was kind of worried that it was going to be a troll thing, but it wasn't. It was a real conversation. No, and I think that those are the type of people that I really enjoy talking to that disagree with me. Younger people that I don't think anything he said was ridiculous. I think that maybe as he gets older, he'll think of positions a little different. What's this? My stupid headset here lately. Whatever. Thanks so much for the subscription, Celtic. Really appreciate it. Yeah, normal person. Maybe we could bring one to the dark side. Get someone who's a good debater, young, that ends up being a little more conservative. That would be nice before they get sucked into the Vosh thing. And, Aftershock, I saw a little of your debate with Dylan. I was working, so I was unable to capture most of it. I was driving, but I felt like a girl at prom. Aftershock was yelling at Dylan about me. I was like, "Ooh." So maybe I'll check out the rest of it. But I saw you were talking about, some things like May 29th, 30th, 2020, where a bunch of lefties tried to string up Trump, drag him out of the White House with Molotov cocktails. And then I tuned back in for like 30 seconds. Then, unfortunately, work called. And you were talking about the speaker, Pierre, talking about stolen elections. Yeah, you can hop on if you want, man. Give me a second. You mind if I go to the restroom real quick? I'll bring you on, then I'll go to the restroom. I'll still be able to hear you in my headset. Let's see here. Aftershock. Oh, for crying out loud. I started a call, Aftershock. I don't know if you... What's up?
Hello.
Hey, go ahead, keep talking. I gotta go to the restroom real quick. It won't be good for any of us if I wet myself. So.
No problem. Sorry, I've been a little sick lately. It hasn't been too much fun. But I think my girlfriend has COVID. Well, I actually think she just tested right now, and she said that she did have it. So, lucky for her, she gets to work from home. So that seems pretty cool. I just started a new job, and it's been going pretty good. I don't want to say exactly what it is, but it's been going pretty good, and I have to do like some training before. But once I complete, I think it's they say it's 2 months, but 2 months of training. But I think it's gonna go longer than that. Once I complete training, I get to work from home, so that's gonna be exciting. My girlfriend says she doesn't like it, but I think it's because she's not really like into anything. Like, man, when I like work from home and stuff, like I'm definitely gonna be, checking out like VODs and stuff and watching your stuff, like on repeat, watching like some YouTube stuff, checking out what Destiny and Vosh are saying and stuff, so I can use my time like, I can use my time efficiently and stuff. So I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. And
Yeah,
so that's something going
well,
on.
good for you. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad. Hopefully, it works out for you. I stopped my current job to do life insurance right around the time that COVID started, and then it's kind of crazy. I know people talk about it a lot, like the life insurance companies and what they're seeing with deaths as far as COVID, and like people that are dying in higher numbers that don't have COVID. I'm on YouTube right now, so I won't really talk a lot about that. But it is true that that like life insurance, they definitely were looking at that sort of stuff. And I unfortunately joined the industry right around the time when there was massive unpredictability. So not only were customers they were like, we don't know what's going on, so we're not buying life insurance. But the company I worked for didn't even know how to insure people who had tested positive for COVID because they didn't know what the long-term effects were. And so if you said you tested positive for COVID, they just weren't insuring you. They were like, nope. And so it was crazy. Like I'm working on commission only, and it was slim picking. So I came back to the field that I'm in now. But yeah,
that's actually pretty surprising. I thought people would jump on insurance.
Well, no one had money. If you're locked down, if you can't work, right? No one had money. How many people were locked down from their job, and so they're just trying to pay the mortgage that month. So it's like, how would you like to spend an extra $150 a month? It's like, yeah, I don't have it right now. And then the selling point we had was like, but we don't know if you get COVID. There's a chance. 6 months from now they could say, well, you're not insurable then because you had COVID. We don't know. We don't know what because people don't understand this, but life insurance, I mean, they discriminate heavily based on your medical history. That's how they make their money, right? They basically just say, we're going to play a numbers game. An individual could live to be 100 or could die tomorrow. But when you take millions of individuals, there's an average, there's going to be an average life expectancy. And that's why if you're a smoker, you're going to pay more because your average life expectancy goes down. And that's how they make their money. They figure out mathematically how much they need to charge to make money. So, but yeah, I wasn't an expert in that shit. I did it for like 4 months and then came back here to healthcare. But, so did you like your conversation with Dylan or?
Yeah, no, I actually think it went really fucking well. The thing is, like, I think it went well in what, like, we talked a little bit about it before I hopped on, but I think it's exactly what I wanted it to be. I think you helped me like 95% of it, but I think I went into it and I told Dylan, I kind of drafted like a whole like kind of like opening and stuff.
I heard that.
I kind of went and I kind of went in on it. I kind of went into it, setting the stage. I told him outright that I don't think this is going to be a productive conversation, and to be honest, I really kind of don't want it to be, because in actuality, I don't really think that my side should be doing that as much anymore, because I think the left has gone so insane that they're trying to wield any and all kind of masks that they can use in order to appeal to our decency, and that is going to be our downfall, I think. And like, I think ultimately the entire conversation was me just calling, like one of the things he was saying, like one of the things that I went down to was we were talking about January 6th, right? And I was on offense all the time. I honestly think it went really well, especially when it came down to like the actual facts. I fact checked him a couple of times and he was like, oh fuck, all right, my bad, like fuck. But one of the things that like which kind of connects to what I'm trying to say is we were talking about January 6th and how I asked him point blank 2 questions. I asked him, one, do you think the people there in January 6th wanted to take over the government, wanted to install Trump as the president and stuff? Everybody who entered the Capitol, do you think that? He said yes. The other question I asked him was, do you think the January 6th commission that came out where Trump had lunged to the wheel and wanted to turn it around, do you think that Trump wanted to turn the vehicle around so he can fucking go back to the Capitol and march with his fucking soldiers and install him as our new rightfully elected president? And he was kind of like, I mean, maybe, I guess. And I'm like, if you had to guess, if you had to bet, you know what I mean, 50,000 on the line right now, what would you say? And he's like, I guess, yeah, I think so. And I told him, you are a fucking moron. I told him, you are a fucking dumbass. How do you, tell me, Rob, how do you have a conversation with someone like that? How?
Yeah, I mean,
how do you, there's no compromise there. There's nothing there. There's no there. There's nothing you can talk about where you guys can, me and him can meet halfway. And I think I've had enough of it. I think I've had enough of the bad faith. I think he's lying. And even if you were telling the truth, there's nothing I could say to him, but you are a fucking moron.
Yeah,
I think that was the, where it went.
It depends. Like, so I think the difference with me is that I'm able to, and maybe this is bad, but I compartmentalize it. For example, like a conversation I had recently, Pisco's full of shit. He's bad faith. I called him out routinely for it when it comes to sort of what I would consider his area of expertise. I don't think he would say his area of expertise is like FISA law or anything like that, but he's a lawyer. And so when it comes to issues of the law, I would think that he would admit that that's his strong suit. And so this isn't out of ignorance. When Pisco's constantly making excuses for the double standard, he knows what he's doing, and that's why I say he's bad faith, because the reason that I wanted to talk to him about the Trump raid and why I was trying to talk to every leftist about the Trump raid before the affidavit came out, before the warrant came out, was because I wanted to get them on record saying this is what would be acceptable, but this is what I would consider over the line, right? Because the narrative that was out there was, oh, it's ironclad. Everything's on the up and up if the FBI did it. Okay. So then when would it not be ironclad, And one of the things I talked about with Sonsel and with Pisco was, well, wouldn't you expect, because it's such a unique situation, for the warrant to be very narrowly tailored? They would have only took what they needed, right? Right, they said. Okay, well, now we know that's bullshit. Now we know that they took... And so when I talk to Pisco next, he'll say, oh, no, they were justified in taking all of this shit, taking his medical records, taking, the Time magazine article. That's what he'll say, right? So I just got it on record. Now I know he's bad faith, but my conversation with him isn't for him. It's for me, and it's for everyone watching, right? Including people that might be in his audience. And it's a small percentage, but it might even be just 5%. That from his audience will look and go, yeah, this is bullshit, right? Like, when I debated him in front of Destiny the other day, like, Destiny, it's clear that Destiny and his audience didn't even hear some of the facts. Like, they had no fucking clue that Manafort got arrested and charged and convicted for FARA violations that he committed with the Podesta group. They had no clue. Like, when I said it, they were, oh, what? Like, they didn't know that. Right? And now, I'm not saying that that's going to massively tilt the scale, but that's why I have conversations with him. Now, having said that, and I think Pisco's bad faith on that, does that mean if I talk to Pisco about, like, do I think we landed a person on the moon, that he's being bad faith with that? No, not necessarily. Right? So I guess I compartmentalize. So when I'm talking to Dylan about Ukraine, I know that Dylan... I don't even know that I would use the word bad faith, because I think that he's open and honest. He's gonna, anything that's pro-Ukrainian, he's gonna say, yep, great. And anything that's anti-Russian, he's gonna say, yeah, great. I guess you could consider that maybe bad faith, but I guess I don't, because he's so open with it, right? Like, there's no debate. I don't even think he would deny it. He says, yeah, there could be a couple things, but basically, Russia's super evil, Ukraine's super good guys, right? So I don't look at it like, I know if I would ask Dylan, like, what did you think of the violence from Trump supporters versus the violence from Black Lives Matter? He's going to bullshit me. He's going to, in his head, make up justifications why it's okay for his side to engage in violence or downplay it, and then the other side he's going to massively overblow, which is apparently what he did with you tonight. At this point, I don't know what to do. What's the options? Not talk to him? Not talk to people that believe that?
No.
Just go in and be like, hey, go fuck yourself before the debate even begins. I think for me, the one thing that drives me, that I always use as my guide for any conversation, is to just be myself, to be authentic. And sometimes that means someone pisses me off and I'm like, go fuck yourself, you're a liar. And other times I could sit there and say, I think you're bad faith. I don't wish ill to you, but I think you're bad faith. I think this is a shitty argument, and I'll tell you why. And I don't know, whatever my gut tells me, that's what I go with that time. And, that's basically how I approach conversations with most people. When they start shit with me, then I'll give it right back to them. But if they're being polite with me, then I'm usually polite with them, even if I'm telling them, I think you're full of shit, which is exactly what I did with Pisco. I told him in a politest way as possible, I think you're a fucking hack. I think you're bad faith. I think it's not worth having these conversations as far as productivity between me and you. But I still have them because I enjoy testing myself. Even if it's someone bad faith making the arguments, I'll still respond to them. And your audience could see how shitty you are. And more importantly than that, I think an independent audience, because I think the danger we run is coming off too unhinged, because I think independents right now see how unhinged the left is. And so if they look, that's one of the optical problems with January 6th. Then, and you, the little bit I heard of you tonight, you made this correct argument, which is, why were they ready with the police on May 29th and May 30th, 2020, but not January 6th? Well, it's because we know the left riots. That's why. Because over and over they engage in riot. When they don't get their way, when they don't get their way, they get violent. But that wasn't the case January 6th. Very rarely did we see right-winger. Name 2 riots. Charlottesville and there. And Charlottesville, I mean, whatever. That was alt-right, whatever, fighting with Antifa the whole time. But other than that, thousands upon thousands of Trump rallies. The only ever violence that occurred was when lefties showed up and agitated. But there was never big riots. There weren't police precincts being burnt down. There weren't targets being looted, right? That never happened. Ever, right? And so when it finally did happen, that's one of the reasons that the police weren't prepared. The other reason, of course, being that that's what the Democrats wanted. They didn't want a police presence there. But neither here nor there. So, I mean, that's the truth. Right, that's the sort of stuff that's going on with it, and you're right. Dylan and them were okay with it, I thought I gave Dylan shit before he came on the other night when I said, I saw you tweeted out that you like Biden's speech, and they think it's hip and cool to start Brandon shit. Guarantee you, I hope that Trump wins in 2024 and gives a speech like that, and then watch Dylan Burns shaking his fucking boots, right? Oh, we found a list of all these people that were at this protest that resulted in violence. We're going to be sending the FBI. Dylan will be saying, this is a violation of the First Amendment. This country was built on protest and disagreement of the government. That's what he'll be saying. This is outrageous, weaponizing the FBI. That's exactly what he'll say. And you know it, and I know it. So the question then becomes, how do we approach it? I think you approach it your way and I approach it my way, I guess. I don't know.
So I don't disagree. I really don't. I just think I've had enough, and a part of me thinks that trying to remain good faith and stick to what make us the party of like genuality, being genuine, I should say, is it might cost us a lot more than we can probably withstand in all of this, and that's why I'm so hesitant with it, because like, let's take like when I was talking with Dylan, right? I asked him about and I was trying on I was going out of my way to be on the offensive, right? I was trying to ask him about all of these things. I said, okay, if you have all these standards, if these are your standards on insurrections, if this is your standard on like what a threat to democracy is, then let me ask you about your consistency. Okay, I asked him about election denying, I asked him about violence, I asked him about insurrections, and the most I ever got was, oh yeah, that's bad. That is the bad faith that I'm talking about.
Right.
And I feel
you're right.
We always, I feel like we always let them slide too much with that. We always let them go with like hand waving, like, oh yeah, that's bad. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't let that. And I was going in there knowing that he was going to hand wave it. And I was telling him, no, wait, hold on. You are just hand-waving this by saying, yeah, that's bad, while I have the president on one hand saying that half of the country is a threat to democracy and a threat to the nation as a whole. So you have to do better than, oh, yeah, that's bad, when your side has been doing this far more times and far worse as well.
Yeah, let me respond to someone in... Let me respond to someone in chat real quick, right? So he says, give me a break. Trump goes out in every rally calling for Hillary to be locked out, coming Democrats, communists, and you care about describing MAGA Republicans as the election-denying losers that they are. First off, I never saw Trump call the voters that voted for his opponent a threat to our democracy, extremists, blah, blah, blah. He may have said that. I never heard it. What I did hear him say was that the media was a threat, was the enemy, that Democratic politicians were the enemy. That's fine. That's been done back and forth by people quite quite often. It seemed to start with Barack Obama that made fun of voters that I could think of first. It could be before that. Granted, I'm only 38. I wasn't following politics much before G.W. Bush. But when Barack Obama mocked Republicans as clinging to their guns and Bibles, when Hillary Clinton said that half the people that voted against her were deplorables, I used to say all the time that the difference was that it seemed that Trump attacked the politician and attacked people with power, but Democrats were oftentimes attacking the voters of the person against them. But secondly, right, I don't actually have a problem with Biden saying what he said. If Biden just wants to say it, fine. It's the fucking hypocritical left that said the reason to reject Trump was that he was divisive, that he was so dangerous with his rhetoric, that's now celebrating when Joe Biden says that 70 plus million people that voted against him that are MAGA Republicans are a threat to democracy. So I'm saying that you're the fucking hypocrite. I don't care that Joe Biden said what he said. Perfectly fine by me. In fact, I'm happy that Joe Biden said it. Get it out in the open. So anyone who voted for Trump, just know that Joe Biden thinks that you're an extremist. So consider that when you may decide to vote Democrat in the future, that that's what they think about you. Third, it's not the language on its own that's a problem. It's what he's done with the language. So, for example, we have nonviolent people from January 6th that have been incarcerated for over 600 days. And have had their rights to a speedy and fair trial taken away from them. They have not been able to access all of the evidence, such as the thousands of hours of videos that day that could prove to exonerate them. We could see the selective application of this, and we could see that Joe Biden has not only gone after, sent his FBI to go after people that are opposed to him, such as angry parents at school board meetings, treating them as domestic terrorists, but actually has a Ministry of Truth committee that was set up to do the work that they were doing in the background, which was pressuring social media companies to censor people that they disagreed with. Now, where's Trump done any of that? By the way, this isn't new for Joe Biden because Barack Obama also weaponized to go after journalists that were critical of him, such as James Rosen, who he wiretapped. And again, all of this comes from the side that said they were so afraid that Trump was a fascist, that he would abuse the power of the state. So the idea that you're like, oh, well, Biden said something and now Trump people, oh, boo-hoo-hoo. Fuck you, dishonest and disingenuous sacks of shit. You cheered it on when it was your side. You're cheering it on now. So everything you said for 4 years about Trump hurt my feelings. He kicked Jim Acosta out of a press briefing. Oh, my God, that's so dangerous. That's fascist. Fuck you. What you're really upset about is your side's done it all along, and instead of just using words, you actually weaponize these institutions to treat people that didn't vote for your side like terrorists. So go fuck yourself. You're not going to get any sympathy here. I hope that made it clear there, Maker Show. Fucking idiots. But yes, to answer your point, Aftershock, yeah, like, that's exactly it. That's where the bad faith nature comes in, right? I could, for example, I could
that conversation. I just want to let you know, like, all of my arguments, I definitely, like, all of everything that I pulled up and everything like that, I got them from you. So, so thank you. Like, yeah,
well, good.
Watching you so many
I'll
times.
have to go back and listen to the whole thing. Work's tough for me, man. Like, sometimes at work I'm driving for 4 hours. Other times I'm sitting there and I could watch a video while, the person I'm watching is watching Harry Potter movies or something. So it just depends. And it was one of those days where I was like, hey, thanks, King Yachty. I appreciate it. But you're right, that's the double standard that's the most insidious, right? Which is the one that, here's the best way I can put it. This is why I refuse to debate Pisco on whether or not, if the allegations in the affidavit are true, did Trump technically break a law? I didn't want to debate him on that until I debated the deletion of Hillary Clinton's emails, subpoenaed emails. And the reason was, what they rely on is shaping the narrative. And whether that's shaping the narrative when it comes to social media, when it comes to Twitch panels, when it comes to, what's the top stories on Twitter, when it comes to what's in the mainstream media, or more importantly, when it comes to things like when to exercise power, so in social media, when to ban someone or not, or in the government, when to arrest someone or not. What they always do is this. They point to something and say, this is bad. And you'll be like, okay, maybe that technically is bad. So they'll point and they'll say, that guy just jaywalked. That's bad. And you're like, yeah, I guess that's bad. And then the next guy jaywalks and he's a Democrat. And they're like, yeah, it's fine. And then the next guy jaywalks and he's Republican. They're like, oh, there's a jaywalker. That's bad. And then 10 Democrats jaywalk and they don't do anything. And then a Republican doesn't. They go, oh, jaywalking. Got to admit that's bad. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's bad. But what about those 10 Democrats that just walked by? And they're like, oh, well, that's whataboutism. We're just saying right now, is this jaywalking bad or not? That's all we're saying. Same with, when Tim Pool's on Joe Rogan's show and Vija and Jack Dorsey's on there. And Tim Pool's like, okay, you kicked this Republican off, this conservative off. And they're like, yeah, well, technically that violated our terms of service, so we were right to do so. And he's like, okay, here's 5 Democrats that did the same thing worse. And they're like, well, we'll have to look into that. Right? Mm-hmm. That's the problem. It's the 2-tiered system. Right? And so what they always want to do is, that, and you correctly called this out, did you notice Pisco kept saying to me, he didn't want to talk about the FISA applications. Didn't want to talk about that. Well, why do you think he didn't want to talk about that? Because it is an open and shut case of FBI corruption, right? Of them being corrupt because they don't like Donald Trump of going after him. So you don't want to talk about it, right? He just wants to talk about this situation right now. If the affidavit's true, did Trump technically break the law? Technically had classified information in his home. Isn't that technically against the law? And that's why I was like, well, let's talk about the Hillary Clinton thing, because I'm not going to fall into this trap of me being good faith saying, I guess technically. Now there's a debate, because I don't claim to be a lawyer, but there is a question of if Trump declassified stuff as president, he had that authority. And there's also a question from the case where Bill Clinton had a recorder in his sock drawer, tapes in his sock drawer, whether or not the president has ultimate authority to determine what to hand over to the National Records Archive or not. So there are at least questions. There were no questions about the Hillary situation. Cut and dry. She couldn't have that. She can't declassify shit. She had top secret shit on her server at home. It was more dangerous because unlike a physical paper where someone would have to break into the home to get it, with an electronic device, it could be hacked, which we know that it was, right? So all the things in the Hillary situation was worse. And she deleted subpoenaed emails, right? All of it was worse. And so that's why I said I'll debate you on this, because Pisco's too stupid and his audience is too stupid. Why is Rob talking about these emails? What does this matter? Because every single fucking thing that Pisco said in that debate, 2 weeks from now when they decide to charge Trump, he's going to have to go against. He'll have to say, oh yeah, there was corrupt intent. Oh yeah, well, it doesn't matter if it was an accident. Oh yeah. And that's why I did it, so that the audience could see. Not Pisco, I know what he'll do, but so that the audience could see how disingenuous and bad faith it is. And I did so, I feel, in a very sober, rational way, going in with a moderator that I knew was going to be a 2-on-1, that Destiny was going to debate me, which he did, which is fine because he's running from me anyways. So that's the only way I ever get to be in a debate with him, is if he feels that he could be the moderator so he doesn't have to lose. Because you don't want to talk to me about this shit. I get it. I wouldn't want to either. Oh, there's Pisco's in there now. Yeah. She did. Yes. Hillary. Okay, let me misspeak because I'm good faith unlike Pisco. Hillary didn't personally delete subpoenaed evidence. A member of her team deleted subpoenaed evidence. Yeah, that happened. But that's why I took that debate. That's why we talk, because Pisco will rely on constantly saying, anytime the FBI does something I like, then it's obviously a good thing because there's wiggle room, there's prosecutorial discretion, they could give immunity when they want and they could not. And he'll ignore the fact that over and over we see that when it comes to the Trump people, they charge people, they investigate them, they charge them for small crimes. And when it comes to anyone connected to the establishment or to the Hillary camp, they do the exact opposite. And so everyone could see, even the people in his Discord server could see, the best they could say is like, oh, it seemed like a wash. That's the best. You know when your own audience is like, oh, I don't know. That's the truth. That's what goes on. And so you're right. That's the most insidious sort of bad faith shit that happens. It's the people that say, well, it's mostly peaceful when the left's rioting on a nightly basis. But then when the right riots, they're like, oh my God, it's an insurrection. It's the worst thing ever. You know? And I thought the little bit I heard when you're talking about May 29th, May 30th, that's the exact right point, right? Because, Dylan's response is like, yeah, I guess that's a little insurrection-y. I'm paraphrasing. Would you say that's fair? I don't know.
He actually said it was.
Okay. Then why not? Why wasn't he all fired up about that? Surely he would have, before the election, been like, my God, these violent left-wingers, insurrectionists. We need to vote against these insurrectionists. My God, the rhetoric of Democrats led to this insurrection. I wonder why Dylan never said any of that going into the election. It's because what they do over and over and over and over again is, when something's happening in real time, they ignore it or they make excuses for it. And then later, when they perceive the other side of doing something similar, they say, this is the most important thing in the world. And when you say, but you had a different take on that shit that just happened a year ago, they're like, yeah, whatever, it's over with now. Yeah, maybe they should have charged people. Oh, well, it's over with now. And then the next time there's left-wing rioting, they'll say, it's mostly peaceful, or they'll ignore it. They'll talk about Ted Cruz going to Cancun, or they'll talk about Trump. Trump said the Mexicans are sending rapists. That's what they'll be talking about again. It's the same shit over and over and over. Oh, I'm sorry, Pisco's saying something. Every time you look into a Rob claim, it's not as I say. Well, Pisco, I just devastated you with your debate partner moderator, Destiny, there the other day. So people could look into the claims for themselves if they want. This is a guy who constantly, from night to night, you have a conversation with, completely changes his position, right? In the Discord, he's saying that, yes, it would absolutely be a crime to delete subpoenaed evidence. And then he goes into the debate and says, I've changed my mind. Now it's not, because you have to have corrupt intent. Now, I looked up from the statute the definition of the word corrupt, which said basically intentionally deleting things. But he said, no, there's case law that says otherwise. This wasn't corrupt intent. I will guarantee that if Trump is charged with laws that require corrupt intent, Pisco, as last time, will say, yes, I know that Trump had corrupt intent. Guarantee that's what he'll say. But yes, it is always nice. It's always nice. Yeah, my mod said Rob was abusing them. So you have thin-skinned mods as well. Okay. But yeah, so I get what you're saying. And, but anyways, to the part with Dylan. So I guess he didn't think that insurrection was a big deal. And his point is, well, they didn't make it into the Capitol. Right, because there was enough police there. In fact, let's put it a different way. What if they would have made it into the Capitol? Do you think they would have done more damage than the Trump supporters did January 6th? Well, seeing as how they burned down a guard station with a Molotov cocktail, I would say yes. They probably would have done more damage. So only because we were prepared, and we know that the left wing is violent, that they had a police presence to stop it. But since when's that the criteria for being worried about an insurrection? Well, one made it into the Capitol but didn't succeed, and the other didn't make it into the Capitol but didn't succeed. So we have to totally stop the country and call half the country a threat to democracy on one side, but the other side we're like, well, they didn't make it into the Capitol, so that insurrection failed a little more than the other one, so we're not worried about it at all. Did I lose you? Aftershock.
No.
It's infuriating, and that's why they don't want to talk.
Yeah.
Notice that Rob doesn't address the Reddit. Let me address the Reddit post here for Pisco. Pisco says that I read this the other night. Pisco, you weren't watching. I understand that you probably aren't watching everything. I don't blame you for that. That I do, but I did respond to this. So let me read what Pisco said in his own words, and then I will debunk it again. Right? He says, during the debate, I give you the explanation for the Stone Tier Reddit post, that Hillary's new email was not available, only her old one had been leaked. That and the fact that she changed her email in response to the leak. The Republicans were confused as to why there were two emails in March 2015, the day before they sent the preservation order, and it made complete and total sense to me that after email had been leaked, that the Clinton camp would want to prevent that from happening again. A lot of these things are facts which you didn't have. You've been ranting and raving about this for literal years and you didn't know key facts. You didn't bother to Google Clinton's explanation for what happened and look into it. And you called me bad faith for believing the reason. You kept pinging me on Twitter about it. You kept messaging people in the Discord about it. During your streams, after the explanation and situation, you didn't fully comprehend. You laughed at me and called me a hack for saying what I said. Has my view changed at all and what has been revealed to you? I said, no, you're still a hack. You got crushed in the debate over and over and showed that you will accept any corruption to defend yourself. And the explanation for the Reddit post is still garbage. He says, explanation still garbage, he says. Explain without saying, but it would still be bad because that's just admitting it was the rationale. It's so sad and pathetic you didn't know about the multiple emails and you didn't bother looking into Hillary's rationale. And you've been ranting and raving about this for years. Lol, imagine. Now, here's what I didn't know. There was only one part of this story that I didn't know. And that part of the story was the allegation, which I'm not sure it's true, but I'll accept it face value, that if you change a post or an email address in Outlook, that it retroactively changes your prior email addresses. So, for example, if my email address is robnor123@gmail.com, at outlook.com, and then I change that to robnor456@outlook.com, all of my prior emails that are archived for 123.com would now be changed to 456.com. That part I did not know. What I did know was that she had multiple emails, that one had been hacked by Guccifer, that had been released to the public, that she changed her email. All of that I knew. I just didn't know that their specific allegation was, oh, if we change this, then that would change the ones retroactively. That explanation literally changes nothing at all. Period. I understand that's their rationale. That's what they claimed their rationale was, but that doesn't make sense because they would have been able to get her new email in a litany of ways if they wanted, and you don't get to say and think that it's okay to say we're going to change records because we don't want investigators with subpoena power to see what is on those records. You do not get to do that. And Pisco's exclamation is, oh, they didn't know that they couldn't do that. They didn't know. They thought that would be cool. They thought it would be cool the day after they agreed to hand over this stuff, that they were going to materially change what was on the stuff when they agreed to hand over. They thought it was cool. That's why this guy was asking on Reddit. If this was something they were worried about, they could have went to the investigators themselves and said, we're worried that you'll see her new email address, which we don't think that you have the right to have, and we're afraid you'll leak it. And they would have said, go fuck yourselves. We're the investigators. We get to see what we want, and we want those preserved as they were when you agreed to send them to us. The rationale is still bullshit. It doesn't matter if that's what they claimed their rationale was. He also claimed that his rationale was that he had an oh shit moment and forgot that he had just talked to Cheryl Mills 2 weeks prior, but remembered Cheryl Mills' conversation he had with him 3.5 months prior. That also is a bullshit explanation. And remember, let's see if Pisco's this generous if they decide to bring charges against Trump. Let's see if he's this generous. When Trump will say things like, we thought that it was declassified. We thought that we were allowed to have access to this information, so anything we did with it, we thought that it was ours. And see if Pisco goes, oh, that was their rationale. They thought, so therefore it's okay. That's not corrupt intent then. Sure, they had intent to withhold it, or they had intent to destroy it, or intent to hand it to someone else, but it wasn't corrupt intent because they thought they had the right. Looking at prior case law and stuff, they thought, and it doesn't matter if they're right through prior case law. All that matters is that they thought. That's, in a nutshell, what went on with the Reddit thing. Pisco's the type of guy, and again, all you have to do is change the word Clinton to Trump and see what you think Pisco would be saying about this.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you have to do. We all know it. He knows it. We know it. He knows that we know it, and he doesn't give a fuck. He still lies about it. That's who he is. It's obvious. And the best part was, Aftershock, this is the best part. He thought, after getting blown up in that debate, right, he thought that this was going to be his point to win it when he went back to, to the Reddit post. He was like, oh, I got a real winner here. I got a winner here. Reddit post explanation debunked. Yep. Their explanation for why they did this Reddit post was debunked. Totally agree. Absolute bullshit. No, Clinton's rationale was not vindicated. I mean, it's just, again, imagine this. For any of out there wondering, just imagine this. Let's say that some of the, stuff that they got from Trump's house, that he took a black marker, erased, cut out a bunch of shit from these and said, well, the reason I cut that shit out was we thought it was personal information, and we were afraid that people would hassle us with that information, so we didn't want investigators to get it because we were afraid they would leak it. Imagine, do you think Pisco would go, that's a rationale? Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. They were worried about this. There were seemingly unprecedented leaks when Trump was in office, and of the stuff that, came from Trump's office. So it makes sense that they would want to destroy stuff to keep their name from getting out there, and to keep certain information from getting out there, right? Do you think Pisco would be like, oh, that's vindication. That vindicates Trump's side. That was their rationale. So, yep, nothing wrong there. They're not hiding anything. Not at all. You think that's what he would say? You think for a fucking minute? Yeah, right. That's Pisco's. Well, as long as something theoretically could be true, well, then that must be that vindicates their rationale. It doesn't vindicate the rationale. The rationale is still bullshit. But there you go. That's an example of the type of thing I think that you're talking about with Dylan as well. I'm not uncomfortable. I clearly just articulated exactly what I said. Again, Pisco, can I get you on record, a yes or no? if Trump deleted, destroyed anything, as long as they have an explanation that plausibly could be true, then you would say that's it. That's a plausible explanation. Therefore, it's debunked that they did anything wrong. Correct? That's what you're saying, Pisco. Correct? That's all you're saying. You're not saying, yeah, like Pisco. They could have said anything. They literally could have said anything. The reason that we were deleting these emails is because we heard that Russians were going to try to, that there was a Russian plant in Grassley's office and he was going to see these documents, so we were worried about that. Theoretically, could be true. So Pisco says, vindication! Vindication! He would have to weigh the evidence! You see? You see? You see? He wouldn't just yell, vindicated! Vindicated! Yes, I'm not arguing that even from the get-go, that hypothetically, the explanation that they offered could be something that technically could be true. It did not justify what they were doing, and it is still far less plausible than the alternative explanation, which is they were trying to withhold certain emails from investigators, which they inevitably did anyways. Hashtag it's different, says Pisco. Anyways, I'm done wasting my time with Pisco. We waste enough time with him. But yeah, I'll have to check out your debate with Dylan. Ultimately, having said that, I think where me and you disagree is I could look like someone like Pisco who's clearly bad faith in this. I don't wish ill on him. It's what separates me from people like him, right? No doubt in my mind, if my channel got canceled, if Biden has his way and the FBI raids my house and decides to put me in handcuffs for no fucking reason, Pisco would probably be like, well, Rob probably deserved it. Probably. That's what separates me from sort of some people like them. I don't wish any ill on him. I hope his law practice, wherever he's working, does well. I hope his channel does well if he wants it to. I don't care, But he's bad faith. And anyone who's seen him talk about these issues knows it. The only people that don't think he's bad faith are the same people on his side that enjoy being just as much of a cheerleader of the corruption. No, I'm saying if my channel went, you wouldn't give a shit. I don't know or care. Right, the question isn't did Trump break the law or not, technically. There's questions of whether or not he broke the law or not. The question is, did he break the law in an unprecedented way to require the unprecedented actions that were taken? Yeah, I like talking to Pisco, honestly, as well. For example, Pisco, another thing that he'll backtrack, we said that there were 4 things that when we first had our conversation about serving the warrant. One was that because it was unprecedented to go after a former president, the first thing was that it had to be a severe crime, a very severe crime, right? In other words, unpaid parking tickets don't justify using the FBI to raid a former president. So it'd have to be something of a serious nature. I don't think that National Records Archive violation meets that. Pisco disagree. Whatever. The second would have to be that your proof of it occurring was, pretty beyond reproach. In other words, you couldn't just say, we heard from a former Russian spy that Trump's team was, colluding with Russians and steal the... Oh, wait! No, the FBI did get a FISA warrant to spy on Trump with that. I'm sorry, they did do that. But theoretically, you shouldn't be able to... And Pisco was okay with that when that occurred. He don't want to talk about that. He's fine with that. The third thing we said was that they had to have exhausted all other options. So in other words, Philip Mudd, ex-CIA agent, said on CNN there a couple weeks ago that almost everyone with a classified clearance is taking classified material home improperly. But we wouldn't raid all of their houses. There's steps that you would take before that. And because this case of a former president is something that's unprecedented and would have political ramifications, they should have exhausted all other options. That's the third thing we talked about. Fourth thing we talked about, the fourth criteria, was that it had to be narrowly tailored. And so in the execution of this warrant, that it had to be very specific. They were after very specific things. We now know. Just today, we're finding out through the possible appointment of a special master that that's not true. They took all kinds of shit that they shouldn't have. So we'll see Pisco backtrack on that now. We'll see him backtrack and say, well, they had to be sure they had to get this and they had to get that. I'll guarantee that he's not out there like, this is terrible. Guarantee it. Are you, Pisco? What do you think? Did they narrowly execute the warrant? Does that seem like something that happened? We'll see. That's not what that ruling says. Well, we can see through the things that are alleged to have been taken. Medical records, things that are attorney-client privilege, etc. Remember, Pisco, for example, is fine in the Hillary situation. One of the things the Inspector General said was he found strange that they never got the computers of Mills, and I believe Aberdeen was the other one, where the actual deletion of these emails occurred physically. And the IG thought that was strange. And the explanations given as to why they didn't get those computers, one of the explanation was timing, because it would take too much time. Another explanation was that they thought that it would there would be a lot of stuff that violated attorney-client privilege because the computers were in the possession of their attorney at the time. And so, but they had no problem raiding Trump's office and taking a bunch of shit that was attorney-client privilege. We'll see. We'll see what happens when it finds out what they took. We'll see. Pisco's still holding out hope. That's not what the ruling said. The ruling didn't say that they took a bunch of, his medical records and attorney-client privilege and a bunch of shit. They put the list of the stuff out that they took. We'll see. We'll see when it comes out officially. Mark it down here. Mark it down now that Pisco's not going to have a problem with it, no matter what it was. They could have taken Melania's dresses and he'll give an excuse why it was warranted.
Didn't they raid Barron Trump's?
That's what Trump's claiming. That's what Trump's claiming. We'll see. But I mean, again, it's not difficult. Everyone can see the double standard. It's not difficult at all. I mean, one of the reasons I like debating people like Pisco is because, I mean, there's going to be those in his audience or in Destiny's audience. They'll believe any bullshit. They just will. But the average person sees how shitty this is, And the more that people talk about it and make excuses for this, the average person can see. The double standard is obvious. The problem is getting those people to pay attention. They were kind of a little bit out of the woodwork, right? Because the FISA abuse and shit stuff was as bad as it gets. We had the FBI basically went rogue and used unverified opposition research sourced by a Russian spy to spy on the President of the United States. And you tried to explain that to people, and they controlled the narrative enough that they were able to get away with it. But that's why people like Pisco don't want to talk about it. They're like, I don't want to talk about that, because there's no defending it. And the best Pisco could do is go, well, what do you want? More people should be fired? Or what do you want? What do you want? Right. No problem with the FBI. It's over with and done with now. Now it's time to trust the FBI. The same FBI that did that, same people, but they couldn't have used bias or corruption or bad faith when it came to their investigation in Hillary. Couldn't have been. It was just a one-off. Trust them. So now it's funny because the people see. They know. The average person knows what's going on. Oh, they raided Trump. What for? Well, he had a few records that the National Records Archive people thought he should have. And so they had to go through his wife's closet and take a bunch of magazines and shit like that. I mean, it's... Pisco says, Barr decided not to charge Trump for obstruction. Part of the rationale was if he was obstructing to save face, wouldn't be corrupt or for the purposes of statutes. Thoughts? There was no underlying crime whatsoever. It's hilarious to watch people that foam at the mouth about Trump's alleged obstruction that had no problem with Hillary Clinton's team deleting subpoenaed evidence. And imagine, I wish the world that Pisco advocates for would turn about on his side. I wish that Trump would do a bunch of corrupt shit to investigate and spy on his opponents ad nauseum, and then when those opponents tried to protest it, then charge them with obstruction. I wish that would happen. I wish that we would start raiding all these left-wing people's homes in the middle of the night, their lawyers in the middle of the night, using Chinese source spies, to make bullshit claims that the FBI did. I wish all that would happen, and then it would get leaked to the press, and they would get smeared for years on end. And then when they protest and say, we want this to stop, just say, obstruction! That's obstruction! Yeah, that's what happened there. It's obstruction. Yep. Good stuff. It's always good stuff to see from these people. All right, Aftershock. I'm probably going to close up. I was supposed to be done at 10. But people should check out your debate. Did you stream it, or was it just on Dylan's channel?
It was just on Dylan's, but But I'm not sure because there was one point where like I pressed him on something, he gave me an answer, and then like later on he just completely backtracked on it, and then I tried to open his VODs to check it out in real time, and he said like his stuff was open, but I couldn't find
Sometimes,
it.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's still up there, but people should check it out if they feel like it. But yeah, I saw a little of it. I'll see if it's still up there. But I think Pisco's mad too because there's a handful of people in his Discord that like me more than him. No, I don't know that that's true. I don't mind Pisco coming on the chat to stir shit up either. I don't mind that at all. But no, Aftershock, I mean, we'll have a talk at greater length about sort of stylistically what to do. I think that all I could do is just be authentically who I am. That's it. Sometimes I get pissed and yell at people. Other times I don't. Sometimes there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason for it. But, I ultimately don't dislike Pisco as a person, or Dylan, or Sonsoul. Maybe I don't know Destiny that well. I know, and that's fine. There are people that I do dislike. I don't like Demon Mom. I don't like No Comment Chick. I don't like Keffels. I don't like fucking, let me think, I don't like Joe Lewis. I don't like Fanatic. I don't like Vosh, right? Like, I think they fucking suck, Then there are some on the left that I like even more, like a Synth from the Crucibles, the lefty. He's pretty cool. I don't mind talking to him. I used to like talking to Empress on Drunken Debates. I don't know what happened to her, but I really enjoyed talking to her. I liked GSU Gambit for a while. Now I do not like it. But, I mean, it's just, it is what it is. I don't know. I guess I've just had a lot of people in my life that I horribly disagree with politically, but still have as friends. I'm not saying that Pisco or Sonsoul or Dylan or Destiny's my friend. They're not. But I don't hate them. I don't have the energy to hate them. I just don't give a shit. I'll call them out. And when I think they're bad faith, I think if you'd ask Pisco would say, yeah, fucking Rob spent half our second conversation calling them bad faith. So, I don't think I'm ducking from it. But, I don't know. That's just, I don't think it would be a good look for me to pretend that I'm more pissed than I am. All I could say is, like, I think you're full of shit. I think that, that if the shoe was on the other foot, I think we all know that you would think the complete opposite. And that's why I don't take your opinion serious. I'm talking to you because I enjoy talking to you, and I want the audience to know how full of shit you are. That's my take on it,
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely need to talk about it because I think if anything, like I know it sounds weird, but I trust your opinion a lot, not just when it comes to politics, but like how we should, carry ourselves, how we should treat people around us, how we should conduct ourselves like in real life. I do value your opinion on that. So I do want to talk to you about, about what I think, about how we should, handle these kinds of people when we're talking to them, when we're arguing, and we obviously know that they're not trying to reach an honest conclusion in the end. I have a lot of questions to you about, the kinds of thoughts that I'm having. And yeah, hopefully we can do that soon.
Yeah. And like, I hope that you or no one else, like, I don't mind taking my opinion, but yeah, you got to make up your own mind, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm right. Like, I think both of us come from the same place that see, that when one side treats you like you're evil and the enemy, and the other side's like, well, we need to like have discussions with you, the former side's going to end up winning at the end.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't disagree, but I just think that there's a way to,
Not lose yourself in the process, kind of.
yeah, right. There's a way to let them know.
To talk to you about, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't think, like, I'll even admit, I listened to you at the beginning, I was like, whoo, fucking Aftershock is coming in hot. Like, you just came in like, go fuck yourself, like, right out of the gate. And it's like, I don't think it's that big of a deal, though, because clearly you and Dylan know each other, right? But if I'm just listening to you for the first, and I know both of you, so I know what's going on. But if I'm listening for the first time, I'm just like, what the fuck did Dylan do to this guy, right? Like, why is this guy just like, and so someone, I think probably then when you're making great points later in the debate, maybe it's lost on some of the people watching because they're just like, this guy's just furious. Like, he's just furious about something. But on the other hand, maybe you're right. Maybe the problem is that if you come off as too affable and it's like, well, if you really believe that this guy's basically cheering for his side that would happily see you censored, that would happily see you locked up, how much can you agree with them? How much can you fucking have a civil conversation? So, the answer's somewhere there. I don't know.
I think the answer kind of lies to I don't want to hold you, but yeah, I definitely have some thoughts on it.
But all right, man. Well, we'll talk sometime. I probably won't be streaming tomorrow. Wednesday and Thursday I should be streaming, and then Friday I got a debate with a climate change guy. But yeah, if you're around, just let me know. Message me and you can hop on. But yeah, I'm gonna head out here soon. So.
All right, that sounds good, man. Well, good chat. Even though Pisco fucking hijacked it.
Yeah. Well, he's got to. He doesn't have his own stream, so what's he gonna do? Yeah. So.
All right, Rob.
I'll
see you later.
Great
man.
talk as always. Yep. Take it easy. As Aftershock, if you guys didn't know, he's one of my favorite people on here. No, I don't mind if you're a Piscordian. Is that how you pronounce it? And Pisco's Discord was like, oh, Rob's on, go say something. It's funny, to Sharpie on Pisco's Discord that said that I'm still malding about the debate. Like, I always love these type of people, right? Like, someone comes on, Pisco comes on, talks about the debate. I wasn't talking about I was just talking about how Pisco's bad faith. That's an example. So Pisco comes on, wants to talk about the debate. So I talk about the debate, and then it's like, oh, Rob's malding about the debate. It's like the people who are like, why can't Trump supporters just get over Trump? Dude, just get over him. Why are you always talking about Trump? It's like, we're not. You're literally cheering for raiding his house. You're still doing January 6th committee shit as the country's going to shit. Well, why are you guys focusing on Trump's presidency? It's time to move on. Right, let's talk about how the country's doing. How's that inflation? Someone asked why the quality sucks. Because I'm not at my home office. I'm at my work office, and I got an inferior camera, and the internet sucks, so I have to lower the resolution, and that's why the quality sucks. It's normally why I don't stream. One of the reasons I don't stream when I'm at my work office. So, all right, we'll find someone to raid real quick, and then I will see you all probably Wednesday, unless something comes up. But should be on comfy.stream come Wednesday. I heard that when they got Comfy up and running, that Andrew got swatted twice. So that's wonderful. Let's raid Lecture Fan. Yeah, I mean, it's not cool. I don't want swatted. I'll say that. I have a baby. I don't need that shit. What the hell? Alright, enjoy this raid of Lecture Fan. He's always doing good stuff, so I'm sure I'll have something good for you. I should be doing a stream with Lecture Fan here soon. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. I'm going to head to bed, and then I got work stuff to do tomorrow, so all donations and follow very much appreciated. Thanks to John that I debated earlier. I thought that was a good debate. Thanks to Aftershock and everyone else that was here. We'll see you all Wednesday. As always, have a good one.